To be honest, I'm running out of mechanical GURPS topics to talk about. I think I covered almost everything at this point. But there is something that comes up surprisingly often and has many nuances. Setting things on fire. After all, player characters always want to set something ablaze. Fling fireballs, Molotov cocktails, grenades, use flamethrowers, etc. The rules for this are described on pages 433 and 434 of GURPS Basic Set. But the rules from page 68 of DFRPG Exploits are actually a little bit different, so let's do an overview and see what is different between these two sets of rules. An ordinary fire deals 1d-1 burning damage per second, or 1d-3 burning damage, if you spend only a part of your turn in it. This is large area injury, unless you simply stick your hand into the fire, in which case damage is limited to your hand. Use common sense. You should remember that fire increases the ambient temperature and may cause FP loss or heat stroke, but that's outside the scope of this video. I immediately have a question. What if I, for example, build a Wall of Fire spell using innate attack with a wall enhancement? If we go by rules as written, then it deals, for example, 1 burning damage if the target spends an entire turn within the wall, and the same 1d burning damage after only spending a partial turn in it. But what makes a magical wall of fire different from a natural one? If you want consistency, consider introducing a rule that spending only a part of your turn in a persistent area effect spell deals its listed damage at -2 per die, unless the spell has the bombardment limitation. I think that's sensible, and it would rein such spells in, which is nice. GURPS Basic Set, but not DFRPG, divides materials into 6 flammability classes: super flammable, such as black powder, highly flammable, such as alcohol or paper, flammable, such as oil or dry wood, resistant, such as seasoned wood, clothing, and leather, highly resistant, such as green wood or flesh, or non-flammable, such as rock or metal. Any fire that inflicts listed amount of burning damage in a single damage roll ignites the material immediately. If the attack cannot deal this much damage even on the best possible roll, it still can ignite the material with prolonged contact. Every 10 seconds, roll 3d. Materials 1 category up catch fire on a 16 or less. Materials 2 categories up catch fire on a 6 or less. Of course, once the material is ignited, it may ignite adjacent materials. You should remember that tight beam burning damage is divided by 10 for the purpose of setting things on fire. Also, GURPS Power-Ups 4 Enhancement introduces a leveled incendiary enhancement that moves the effective flammability class of anything damaged by the attack up 1 step per level. Let's go back a little bit. Clothing, and most characters wear clothing, is resistant to fire, but there are some special rules. While an entire suit of clothing is considered resistant, setting only part of the target's clothing on fire is easier. This is considered flammable. Thus, if you deal from 3 to 9 burning damage in a single hit, you ignite a part of target's clothing. Partially burning clothing deals 1d-4 burning damage per second. This is distracting. Apply a -2 to dexterity. If you deal 10 or more points of burning damage in a single hit, then you set all clothes on fire. This is a proper fire that deals 1d-1 burning damage per second. It is even more distracting. Apply a -3 to dexterity. This distraction penalty does not apply if the fire cannot actually harm you. How do you stop being on fire? If only a part of your clothing is on fire, you can take a ready maneuver and a dexterity roll to put out the fire with your hands. Dexterity penalty from distraction is not applied here, but shock penalties from burning damage do apply. If all your clothes are on fire, then the basic set says that you must either jump into water to douse the flames automatically, or drop and roll. The latter takes 3 ready maneuvers and a dexterity roll. DFRPG Exploits phrases it differently. A change posture maneuver to drop and roll puts out burning clothing automatically. Alternatively, you can stay standing and try to put out the fire with your hands. This takes 3 ready maneuvers and a dexterity roll. This actually makes a big difference, since you can put out the flames automatically with a single maneuver. Also, it's not specified, but I assume that you have to have both of your hands free to put out a fire if all your clothes are on fire, and only one for partial fires. But what if you have extra arms? Shouldn't that give a bonus then? I think a +1 per extra free hand would be nice. Okay, clothing is more or less clear now, but what about other types of gear? Most importantly, shields. If a wooden shield takes 10 or more points of burning damage in 1 second, or is hit with a flaming fuel, that's a DFRPG addition, then it catches fire. This is distracting, like a partial burning clothing, a -2 to dexterity. The basic set says that the wielder takes 1d-5 burning damage per second, but does not specify the hit location. I assume that this is shield arm for strapped shields and shield hand for bucklers. DFRPG, however, removes this damage entirely. GURPS basic set doesn't actually tell you how to put out the fire, but DFRPG says that putting out a burning shield requires a ready maneuver and a dexterity roll, just like for partially burning clothing. By the way, what about cloaks? GURPS basic set doesn't say anything, but DFRPG says that these rules also apply to cloth cloaks. But why only cloth? Leather is in the same flammability category as cloth, so it should apply to leather cloaks as well. In case you didn't know, the rules for leather cloaks are on page 13 of GURPS Fantasy Tech 1. DFRPG also expands these rules a bit by saying that a cloak or wooden shield that burns for seconds equal to its weight in pounds is ruined. That's good to know. And here's another interesting rule change. GURPS Basic Set says that incendiary weapons, such as torches, deal 1 point of burning damage as a linked effect, but DFRPG Exploits says that they are follow-up effects. It's up to you to decide what rule set to use. And that's it. As you can see, the rules make sense, even if they are a little bit convoluted. But I don't know how you'd be able to simplify them while keeping them satisfying. Getting set on fire in combat is quite deadly, and getting set on fire in general is quite deadly. But if we speak from the point of view of realism, fires in GURPS are too deadly. There is a post on the No School Grognard blog that talks more about this. It suggests downgrading the fire damage from 1d-1 to 1d-2 or even 1d-3, and introducing a respiratory effect that represents your lungs burning out. I like the suggested changes, I might use them in my next game. Anyway, thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.